Aloha hiahika po. Welcome to our fourth episode of our Aha Wahine Kūhinapapa webinar series. We're going to get started in a few minutes, but if you're joining us, will you please share with us where you're tuning in from in our Zoom chat or in our Facebook Live comment section. We would love to see where everyone is from. And aloha your aina.
Awesome. Oh, very cool. We have some people from Hilo, from Lihue, Punalu'u on the island of Oahu. Aloha nui kako. Yeah. So we're just gonna let a few more friends jump on and maybe even share. You can share on your Facebook, and just to kind of encourage more and more people to come and join us this evening. We have some amazing guests today, mother and daughter dual team, and just exciting information and exciting inspirational mo'olelo to share with all of you this evening. Yeah, so please, I'm coming from Kaneohe. Where are you coming from, Napua?
Aloha from Kamananui, Waialua.
Yeah, so we're reaching all the Pae'aina from Hawaii, Mokua Keawe, all the way to Kauai. Aloha nui kako. Aloha mahelani. Yeah. So maybe as you wait a few more minutes, how many of you joined us in the last Aha Wahine? Maybe you can chat, put that in there so we know that I want to mahalo you folks for all of your continued support. Yeah, last month, what did we have last month? You guys remember? It does seem kind of a long time ago. But we had the Ohana Kahaunaile. Can you see that? Oh, mahalo, first timers. You have some first timers. Okay. Aloha. Okay. Yeah. So I guess we can get started. Yeah. Aloha nui kako. Maybe we can unshare our screen and we can get it going. Aloha kako. Mahalo nui for all of you who are joining us. Our topic for today is the intersection of Aina, activism, and academia. And we have two brilliant scholars, two brilliant wahine, Kanaka Hawaii, here to share their mo'olelo with all of us and to inspire all of us to just all of the amazing work that they've done and how it's really shaped a lot of our lahui, and in particular those in our rural areas of our Pae'aina to continue to be the ku'aina of our aina, of our place. See, first off, I want to introduce Dr. Davianna Pomekai Mcgregor. She's a professor and director of the Center for Oral History in the Department of Ethnic Studies, College of Social Sciences at UH Manoa. Her ongoing research endeavors focus on the persistence of traditional Hawaiian cultural customs, beliefs, and practices in rural Hawaiian communities on the main Hawaiian islands. This work is featured in her award-winning 2007 UH Press book, Nakua Aina, Living Hawaiian Culture. She lives in Ka'ivi'ula on the island of Oahu, as well as Ho'olehua Molokai, where she's tuning in right now. And as a member of the Protect Kaho'olawe Ohana, she helps provide stewardship of the island of Kanaloa Kaho'olawe. And I'm so fortunate that she's one of my kumu, so aloha kumu. And I'm gonna pass it over to Napua to introduce her daughter, Rosie.
Aloha mai kākou. I have the honor of introducing Dr. Rosie Anolani Alegado, who was born and raised on Oahu. She is an associate professor of oceanography and sea grant at UH Manoa, where she is a director for the Center of Excellence in Integrated Knowledge Systems. Rosie investigates how microbes shape the adaptive potential of their ecosystem across space and time. In partnership with Paipao He'eia, she tracks the influence of restoration, storms, and multi-annual climate patterns on the health of He'eia fish pond. Together with the nonprofit Kua Aina Ulu Awamo, or Kua, and Hawaii Sea Grant, she is involved in developing Kuleana Noi'i, a process wherein researchers build and sustain equitable partnerships with community. She serves as vice chair of the City and County of Honolulu's Climate Change Commission. Aloha mai kākou.
Aloha. Aloha.
Aloha.
Oh, may we start? Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm looking at the list of, I'm so glad to see so many friends. I don't feel so nervous now, and glad to see that my sister Danita is tuning in from Kapa'a also. Aloha. So this is our collage to start off with here, all the different events and places we've been from Kaho'olawe and our families as well. I'm going to start with a chant that I composed for our family's heiau in Hau'ula, Mauna Wila heiau, to ask permission to enter onto the heiau. And I have woven into it the names of our kupuna, and I'll explain who they are and how it fits into the chant. Aloha Mauna Wila I ka malie, malie I ka malui loko pamawaho, holopuna iki I ke kai kapalawa, halia aloha makua kaumana, mai ha'alulu I ka leo, e o ka ma'aina, e mauna limahana no keia aina e a oia. And so the chant weaves into, first of all, Mauna Wila, which is on my family's land in Hau'ula. It's a 9-acre property that my grandmother, Louisa Mcgregor, applied for when there was homesteading open. And she applied for it August 30th, 1906, which was a month before my dad was born, September 30th, 1906. And they had misfortune on the land, so eventually they moved away down the coast, and the land had sat idle until then. It was just a space, and it was holding the heiau and all the many sites that have begun to be revealed to us. And in my generation, we worked to find a conservation buyer, and we found the Hawaii Island Land Trust, who now protects it in conjunction with the Hau'ula Community Association and the Ko'olauloa Hawaiian Civic Club. This is showing some observations we do on the heiau. This is at the Kealopiko Kane in the summer solstice. And here I've woven into the name Pamawaho, which is the name of my grandfather and my dad. And we'll honor them through this. And this is a stream that runs through intermittently. And it says it goes to the Kai Kapalawa, which means the beach of the whale, the sperm whale. And this is where it is along the shoreline here. This is a point here. And this is where the heiau is, or the heiau's on this property. And it says that we are reminded of Makua Kaumana, who was a prophet, who, according to Cy Bridges, one of the kupuna in Hau'ula, Makua Kaumana was one of the caretakers of the heiau. And Makua Kaumana was a prophet who came here with Pa'ao. He was the one who asked, you know, that the Pa'ao was leaving the bay and he's calling from the cliff, I want to come with you, I want to come with you. And Pa'ao says, oh, there's room on the ihu. And so Makua Kaumana has to fly from the cliff and land on the ihu in order to come. And he's a very famous prophet. But when the palawa came, a big palawa, a sperm whale came to take Makua Kaumana back to Tahiti, where he had come from. And that's why the point there is named for that event. And then the other names that are woven in is Limahana, and that is my grandmother, Louisa Mcgregor, is a Limahana descendant. And then I said Aoya in honor of her name. And these are members of the Hau'ula Community Association and the Ko'olauloa Hawaiian Civic Club. This is a picture of my grandmother, Louisa Mcgregor, and she was in the first class of women to graduate from the Kamehameha schools in 1897. And as I said, she's from her Limahana Ohana is from Holualoa and Kona. This is a family reunion we had on the site. And the house site evidently was right here, right on the beach, the sandy area, and then out into the beach. And then this is my grandpa, Daniel Pamawaho Mcgregor Sr. And while the property that the heiau is on was not Kuleana, but there are other parcels that were Kuleana lands, and his grandfather was at one time a konohiki of the Hau'ula area. And in my research about Prince Kuhio and the founding of the Hawaiian Homestead Association, I came across the Aha Hui Pu'uhonua na Hawaii, which translates into the Hawaiian Protective Association. And they had a newspaper, and on the masthead, it listed my grandfather as the treasurer. And I had no knowledge about this, but the Aha Hui Pu'uhonua na Hawaii was the main architect for the Hawaiian homesteading program. And interesting enough, my partner, Noah Emmett Aluli's grandfather was the executive director for the Aha Hui Pu'uhonua na Hawaii, so they knew each other. And then on my mom's side, we're the Meyer Brancos. My mom and the Meyers and the Brancos were at Laupohohoi. And in this area here, which got wiped out at the time of the tidal wave of 1946, and they lived in Hilo, and I spent most of my summers growing up with them. That's pictures of me when I was little. Okay, I took a long time to decide what to share, and I'm hoping that it's of interest to you. We discussed it, and I said, well, you know, it could take the realm of within the Halepe'a, where you talk about you know, issues of concern of women, particular to women, and issues of family and adjustments and such like that. But what I wanted to do was to place it within the realm of the Haleopapa. And this is on the left is a picture of our Haleopapa in Hakiwava on Kanaloa Kaho'olawe. And when we went to the Edith Kanakaole Foundation, and Tipulani Kanakaole Kanahele said, the Haleopapa was not a place to talk about family matters and social matters. It was a place to elevate our knowledge. And as we know, the Kanakaoles have done research into the Kumulipo, and she spoke of how in the 13th wa of the Kumulipo, Papa, Haumea, but Papa organized all scientific knowledge into 3 schools of knowledge. The Papa Hulilani, which studies, you know, the universe, everything from the trees and up into the sky, and the leva and the nu'uleva and out into the broader universe. And the Papa Hulihonua, which studies all the earth sciences, including volcanology and oceanography, etc. And then the Papa Hanaumoku, which studies all living things, from insects to plants to humans. And so it was a school of women who organized this scientific knowledge. And so I wanted to share what was some of the important research that I have been able to participate in with communities on every island, and to share what have been some of the important new information that has come about, and also kind of precedents that have been set. And that's what I will be sharing this evening. I am within the Department of Ethnic Studies, and I wanted to share the hallmarks of my department at UH Manoa. Well, first of all, we got started out of a student struggle, and you can see that was a rally before we went and sat in at Bachman Hall for 2 nights to demand that the program be established. And this is us the evening time, 2 nights at Bachman Hall. But our approach when we finally being established was participatory action research. And that's where we see the link between activism and academia. And so that's what I am linking, I'll be talking about is my experiences in linking academia with community activism and community engagement. But our department's also known for training of undergraduate lab leaders to have peer instruction. So we engage students with each other, and we feel that peers can also be engaged in helping each other learn. And we also very broadly engage our students in AINA-based service learning. And a lot of my students have participated with me on my AINA-based education. One that we used to have, and we aren't able to anymore, but we haven't done as much, but we used to have what we call geopolitical tours. And one of the best was going out to Ko'olau Loa Oahu and talking about the Kamehameha School's plans for He'eia and He'eia fish pond, where they were going to dig out the fish pond and make it a marina like they did at Hawaii Kai, and then have a marina here where the marshland is, and then make all condominiums and golf courses and subdivisions. So it's going to be just like Hawaii Kai. But through the activism of mostly the Hui Aloha Aina Ko'olau and a woman named Jopa Task. So anyway, they organized, and today we have all the wonderful work of, the He'eia ahupua'a being one of the first ahupua'a that's being restored from Mauka to Makai. We also, through the Ko'olau geopolitical tours, organized to try to stop H3. We were not successful, but we put up a good fight. I also took my students to Molokai, where I am now, coming at you, and learning about the struggles there. These are all pictures from Hui Alaloa when they had the big march in July of 1975 to open up access through Molokai ranchland to the beaches. But now I mostly take my students to Kanaloa Kaho'olawe once, even before it was legal, but under the consent decree that the Protekalawe Ohana had for joint governance of the island with the US Navy, I was able to take my students and engage in ceremonies as well as rejuvenating the island, restoring the island. And so those experiences were always transformative for my students. And I think the reason is because when you go to the island, there's no electricity, there's no running water. We're not distracted by anything modern, and we're fully immersed in the Aina and all the elements, and it leads to self-reflection. And we feel the pain of the island, and we see what happens when the island is so terribly abused and neglected, but not just neglected, but abused, and how there's no water to help the land live. And so most of us become very appreciative when we go home of our beautiful lush islands, and we want to work to make sure that what happened to Kaho'olawe doesn't happen to our own home islands. And many of our Ohana members and my students who have gone with me to the island are now engaged in conservation work and providing stewardship for their own lands. And the other area that we did on Aina work and service learning was reopening the Kapapa Lo'i o Kanewai. And here you can see, I'm here, Rosie and I are here with Uncle Harry Mitchell. And this is the first day that the Auwai was opened up and flowed into the first of the Lo'i, which we called Laulima. And Uncle Harry Mitchell said, oh, I have to stand up because the light is off. I mean, Uncle Harry Mitchell said, "Ho'okahewai ho'ulu aina." When the water flows, the land will live. And that became the name of the hui of students, Keone Fairbanks and Akela Kuniaupio Crozier and Nahoa Lucas and Naune and Vinny and I'm trying to remember everybody's names, but anyway, the whole group, they took on that name, Ho'okahewai Ho'ulu Aina, because they were the ones who, cleared the grassland, and then we opened up the Awai to have the water flow to make the land live. And my students worked there many, many years to help the Lo'i reopen and get established there. And now the Ethnic Studies Department and the College of Social Sciences has adopted social service learning and Aina-based service learning through the Malama Ina Ahupua program that's very active. But I'm going to go on to share some of the research that I've done. And I want to acknowledge, first I want to mahalo, I should have started with that. I want to mahalo the organizers and all of those women who've been organizing the Aha Wahine. I'm thank you and so grateful for all the work that you've done all these years. And I want to acknowledge my mentors and my colleagues, Uncle Harry Mitchell from Keanai Wailua Nui, Pualani and Edward Kanahele, and the Edith Kanakaole Foundation, my partner Noah Emmett Aluli and Pali Kapu Dedman, my other colleagues, John Matsuoka and Luciana Minerbi, who we did many of these studies that I'm going to share with, we worked on together as Can Do, and all of my kupuna, of course. And so one of the first things I wanted to share is the intersections between academia and activism was my dissertation, Kupa'a Ika Aina, when I finished it in 1989. Then later in the 1980, well, first 1993 is the apology resolution, but it started to be worked upon as the health, Native Hawaiian health bill. And I worked with Kekuni Blaisdell, and we worked with the congressional delegation and Emmett Aluli, and we helped to draft the Native Hawaiian health bill. And in it, we put all of the language that we wanted to show that the United States was responsible for the overthrow of the monarchy. And they were responsible for participating in an illegal, undeclared act of war. And so we did a lot, the research that I did in my dissertation, a lot of the language did make its way into the language of the apology law that was signed into law in November of 1993 upon the 100th anniversary of the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. Another intersection was that my team, John Matsuoka and Luciano and I, worked with the Molokai community, and it was called the Governor's Molokai Subsistence Task Force. And the chair of the committee was Uncle Mac Poipoi and someone from the DLNR. And so we met with the community. We had a very diverse approach to conducting the research with the community. We did a cross the island survey in which we had students like Malia Kuragawa, who's not a professor, was at the time a student and was one of our interviewers. And we had focus group meetings, and then we had our report, and we had to report back to the community. The result of the survey was really astounding. We found that for Native Hawaiian families on Molokai, they depend upon subsistence for 38% of our food. And I can see it here. You know, we don't fish, but as kupuna, we get a lot of people who give us fish and give us kalo and give us other mea'ai, and deer, especially now because they have such large herds. But subsistence was really a key. And reason why we were brought in from the university to work with the community on this report, because they felt that Molokai Ranch was planning to develop the island. The whole west end of the island was planning to be developed, and they were trying to get the water. They're trying to divert the water to develop and open up their ranch lands. And so we had to prove that subsistence was so very important to the people on the island. essential to the livelihood and the lifestyle of the people, and that if any development were to occur like that, that it would have tremendous impact beyond the impact of jobs. But beyond the report resulted with Uncle Mac Poi Poi and the Mo'omomi community coming up with the proposal that what we need to do is really to protect this northwest coast of Molokai, which is what the Hawaiian homesteaders relied especially heavily upon for subsistence, and we do, from Ilio Point to Nihoa. And that has his proposal resulted in new legislation being passed to set up a community-based subsistence fishing area category. Up until that time, they only had marine fish areas, and those were all no-take zones. But this is not a no-take zone. This is a zone where you can only take for subsistence. What it is it'll set up a zone out 1 mile where there will be no commercial take. And the kupuna said, our resources are plentiful, but they're not as plentiful as when we were growing up. And what we need to do is to reserve these resources just for subsistence and to restrict commercial harvest within this 1 mile zone along this about 5 mile coastline. Sorry, went ahead of myself. So this community-based subsistence fishing area, we had a pilot project initially. It was 25 years ago. We're still now in the process of trying to get it approved by the Board of Land and Natural Resources and the governor to establish it for Mo'omomi. But already preceding us, a few years ago, the Ha'ena community on Kauai was able to successfully establish the first community-based subsistence fishing area to have the community manage their resources for subsistence use. Another study that I was involved with, and I see that my colleague George Atta is on the Zoom tonight, and aloha George. George was with Group 70, and I worked with him as well as cultural surveys. And we did this study of Kenai and Wailua Nui called Kalo Kanu o Ka'aina. And I did interviews of all the kupuna. What we were able to show is that the design of the awai and the lo'i kalo in Kenai and Wailua Nui and Lakini is the same as it was in pre-contact times. Well, close to pre-contact. We have early maps. The earliest maps were from the early 19th century, but the layout of the lo'i kalo was the same, and that these were eligible to be protected and preserved as historical cultural landscapes. But in the process, what I did was interview people and use the documentation for a court case that the East Maui taro farmers filed. And the court case was filed, I don't know, I think in the late 1990s or early 2000s, but it took about 25 years for the court case to actually result in a win. And so I was brought in using the information I had gathered here and the documentation we had established with cultural surveys and Group 70. We were able to bring in what we had gathered as testimony in the contested case hearings that the East Maui taro farmers had initiated. And it overall resulted in a return of many of the streams, the restoration of many of the streams along the Ko'olau coastline, and in particular, the restoration of Wailua Nui. Shown here, Ed Wendt, who is the leader of the initiative to restore the streams and restore the in-stream standards. And then I also did a similar study for Waiahole Waikani, which also resulted in a decision to not just I contributed to the whole process. There are a lot of testimonies, but my testimony was one of these considered in the contested cases. And eventually in 97 and 2001, 2006, half the water was returned. Another study that we did was a geothermal ethnographic study about what's the impact of geothermal energy development, which we have to be very careful of as we look to alternative energy again. And we're able to stop a 500 megawatt development in the Waukele Opuna forest. And Waukele Opuna was sold to OHA, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, in 2007, and it's being held in trust for a sovereign Hawaiian entity. This shows Kekuhi and Kaumaka'iwa doing the ceremonies of healing for its return. I also did a study on contemporary subsistence fishing practices around Kaho'olawe in 1997. And one of the things I wanted to share that I found really interesting was that in a study that was done by Dr. Kosaki, he was saying that the konohiki rights were targeted by the US colonial government when they took over control of Hawaii. And the fish ponds, as we know, they were given, owners of fish ponds were given 2 years, and after that, they didn't claim them, they lost ownership. But the konohiki rights were extinguished, it was targeted. But the rights of the maka'ainana, fishing rights of maka'ainana, were not extinguished and still were perpetuated. And so I applied that rationale also to looking at the mahele, that even though not everyone registered their claims, that didn't mean that their right to claim was extinguished. As was mentioned, this was all brought together. A lot of my work was brought together in this book, Na Kua Aina, and it focused on cultural kipuka rural communities that have been bypassed by major historic forces, economically, politically, and social changes. And they have been the strongholds of our culture and language. And it's very important that we protect the livelihoods and the way of lives of these kua'aina in these communities. I'm working on a project on Mapulehu now to help protect the lands of the Ahupua'a of Mapulehu, where the second largest heiau on our islands, Ili'ili Opai Heiau, is located. And I'm also potentially trying to work with Kavela Ferrant and the North Shore Land Trust to restore the lands of Waiale'i that is under control of the University of Hawaii. So another link with the university. And that's the end of my sharing. I turn it over to Rosie now. Aloha.
Wow, this is great stuff. I just cut in a little bit because we had a bunch of comments of just mahalo, saying thank you to you, for all of your work. And I think maybe even as students, we didn't realize that we were part of that work, or that many of your haumana have continued the work because of that foundation you've laid. So we've had a lot of mahalo for all your work over the years, the work you continue to do. So many of our lives have forever been changed since we've taken your class. So
mahalo.
Mahalo. Okay. Wow, thank you so much. But yes, kalamai. Rosie, you're on.
Okay, mahalo. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now. And I've been messing around with my slides, so hopefully everything still works. Let's see. Yeah, so I mean, of course, Mom and I share the same mo'okuauhau. And in trying to think about it, I wanted to share that not only do I consider, when I share and I talk a lot about place-based research, and I actually wanted to share this image because I always ask my students, where is your aina? And I always share that I consider my mother to be my first aina, right? Our vai, and our mothers are our first aina. And so I love to use this picture of her because it brings together her scholarship. And then of course, this is Sailor's Cap on Kaho'olawe, and that's what I share. But I also wanted to share that, I'm a Kanaka Filipino. My dad was a professor at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. My mom actually hired him, and he brought a lot of experience in terms of looking at the Filipino, developing that whole curriculum about Filipinos in Hawaii and helping us to really understand the role and the influence that those who came through the plantations have and continue to have, and the influence in building that local kama'aina culture. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And so when you have these two parents who are extraordinarily active in the community, what that means as a keiki is that you just kind of go along for the ride, and you get really swept up in it. And this is me holding Stop US military aid, and I went to a ton of protests, went to a lot of things, and it completely shaped, being a child of ethnic studies completely shaped my entire philosophy. Although I went on to become a scientist, it continued that requirement of always being connected to the people, and that everything is either, you know, no kapo'e or pangmasa. Those were the things, those are the words that really echoed through my life, is that everything has to be for the community. And the other thing that was really important that I wanted to say is that it was so important for me to be a child of minority or racialized faculty, and to be raised in the ethnic studies department, where I was surrounded by really smart people who were minorities, because what it did for me was that it meant that people who looked like me and were in the university was normal. It was an everyday thing. And I actually now feel that that's one of the privileges that I have, is that I felt like I was raised that UH was my place. It was, for me, it was a place that I belonged, that we all belonged. And that is really how I carry myself, is I kind of have this saying, you know, when you take your kids, I have two kids, Lehiva and Komo'o, you know, you go to a new place and you say, okay, don't act up, right? This is not your place. We're malihini here, so we have to be respectful. Don't shout, don't yell too loud, right? You know, act enihikahele, step lightly. But the exception, I feel, is that when it comes to the University of Hawaii, this is our place. And we really have to, as kama'aina, as kanaka Hawaii, it's really important that we continue to assert that the University of Hawaii is for us and that we belong here, particularly when we disagree with what the university administration is doing. So today I'm actually going to spotlight for all of you, because I have not had a long career like my mom has. I feel like I'm still growing, and I'm still receiving the teaching of all of my mentors, and want to acknowledge, of course, my ohana and all of my teachers. And I'm just so thankful. I see some of my lab is on here as well. And so I'm going to talk about how I've tried to, and how my lab and all of the people that I've come into connection with are helping us to recast and rethink about our methodologies in STEM, and integrate that with what it means, you know, with Ike Hawaii and what it means to be aloha aina. So a huge part of my research and a huge part of who I am now as a scientist, I really grew here at Heia Fish Pond. And you know, when I applied for the position at the University of Hawaii, it was one of the first positions where they were interested in having a scientist who had some connection with the community, the oceanography department. And it was a joint hire with Sea Grant. And I went to my mom and I threw some random ideas, and she said, hey, what are you doing? Just, you know what you should really do? Go call Keli'i, Kotubete, and Hi'ile Kavelo and talk story with them and see, you know, what is going on at their fish pond, and see what you can do to help. And that's what I did. And I actually pitched in my job talk that I would work with the community at Heia Fish Pond. But you know, at the time, I didn't really know what that meant, because I had been away from Hawaii immediately after I graduated from Kamehameha schools. I'll say it was in 1996. And so I had not been present for all of the wonderful changes and restoration that, you know, people like Anoi Nui on this call really laid the foundation for. And so I didn't know what I was stepping into. And it just really has become a wahipana to me, that has provided inspiration, and just so much ike that I've learned from the staff. So I just wanted to highlight all of the people in my lab, past and present. I've been really blessed to have some amazing undergraduates as well as postdoctoral fellows like Kiana Frank. My current lab, I am so blessed to have 6 graduate students. I see that some of them are on the call, but I just wanted to shout out Akabibi, Nalani Olgin, Becca Lenzing, Kui Kili'ipule Ole, Hoaka Thomas, and we have now sometimes been asked to come to the call of other communities who would like to know the status of their water quality. So we look at the namea huna, the little tiny microbes that are in the water, and how they impact and they affect everything around us. So just, I'm going to give you one science fact, which is if you all hanumai, breathe in, breathe out. One more time, hanumai. Breathe in, breathe out. Every other breath we take, we owe to the microbes that live in the ocean. And those microbes, it turns out, are the exact microbes that our kupuna were trying to grow, because they not only produce oxygen, they fed our fish. And all of the oxygen that most of the oxygen that we breathe on Earth were things that our kupuna knew how to cultivate even more and bring more richness. So I just wanted to share that nerdiness. And then I wanted to share that, you know, as a scientist, yes, I grew up in the ethnic studies department and felt really grounded at the university, but as a scientist, there were always these dilemmas. And this is kind of a common dilemma of Indigenous science. And I have to credit, we have a very strong hui of scientists, Kanaka and Indigenous scientists that we've begun to build at the University of Hawaii and come together. And I really owe a lot of this thought process that I'm going to share with you to them, particularly Dr. Aurora Kagawa Viviani. So let's just be out there and acknowledge that Indigenous communities often have a complicated relationship with science. There's this intergenerational fear, which is based in a very real legacy of colonial harm and colonial application of science. And science has been disrespectful to Indigenous rights and sovereignty. That's just a reality. And yet, even though we have this really kind of scarred wounds from our interactions with science, there's this perception that if we can get our Indigenous students to participate in scientific professions, and we do it the right way, that we can support Indigenous self-governance. So at the same time, we're urged to indigenize science and create these mutually beneficial relationships, but we don't have enough leaders of people, and I don't count myself as a leader. I'm still on the path, I'm still receiving knowledge. You know, I think of the leaders as, you know, Auntie Pualani, Kanaka Ole Kanahele, my teachers, you know, Auntie Kalenu Uhiva, as being fluent enough to resolve these kind of questions. But the bottom line, you know, if you talk to Hawaiian scientists and Indigenous scientists, is like, I don't really want to be known in my community as a scientist, but I want to be known as somebody working on the side of people and the earth, right? So, you know, the reality is I'm in the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology, which would normally be like, that's Papahulilani, right? UH actually has the largest School of Geosciences in the nation. And we're nationally ranked, we're 13th in the world. We actually beat out MIT for being amazing in earth sciences. But the reality is that although 25% of our state of population are Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, and 1/3 of our school-age children are Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander, when I joined the faculty of SOEST, only one Native Hawaiian master's student was in the school. There were only 3 PhD students out of 105. There was 1 Native Hawaiian postdoctoral fellow, and there was 1 Native Hawaiian tenure track faculty in the school, and that was me. So it really did not, this idea that we have this intimate connection with the earth, with ocean and climate, did not translate to this institution. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Anela Choi, who is faculty at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, for seeing this reality and creating what we call the SOEST Maile Mentoring Bridge, which is that we realized there weren't, number one, there weren't enough Kanaka and Native Hawaiian Pacific Islanders at the faculty level, at the graduate level. There was no pathway because there just weren't any of us. She made the connection that we have to go all the way to the community colleges to help students transfer into the sciences, and we have to build that. And the reason we think that there's all these barriers is because there's this perception of, how does what we do even relate to my family or to my community? And then integration, how does this educational system that I'm supposed to be in accommodate my culture and my way of knowing? And until we solve those problems, we're going to continue to have this conflict. So Anela was really instrumental, and I thank her for bringing me into the SOEST Maile Mentoring Bridge. She was a PhD student. She was one of the few PhD students of local students. And then she graduated and said, Rosie, can you continue the program? And I just felt the Kuleana did. And our goal was to attract Kama'aina and underrepresented graduates in SOEST programs and help them thrive. And so from those small numbers of Native Hawaiians, we have now grown into many, many more. And again, I want to acknowledge the Maile program staff who are on this call, Ku'i, Kili Pule'ole, and U'ilani is on this call. And I just want to thank them for continuing the work. They're the real people who do all of the work and make it happen. And when we have this peer-to-peer mentoring and we build like a punana, that transfer experience becomes a personal experience. And so it became more than just, you're gonna come here and get your degree. It became, we're gonna volunteer at He'ia Fish Pond. We're gonna go help with the limu cleanup. And then, you know, we formed cohorts where people really felt like they had friends group. Even to, we had Ava nights, you know, where people could just come and kuka kuka. And this last image here is that as a culmination, they actually carved on Ohe Kapala their science and their projects. And we created, you know, kihei for them to wear at graduation. And each one represented and had their own story. But it wasn't enough to do students. We really have to change and create methodology for our research. And this is something that I wanted to talk about briefly, that I've been working with Sea Grant, which is a department at the University of Hawaii Manoa, as well as Kua Aino Ulu Awamo. And I think we all agree that when researchers and kia'i or community meet, hopefully sometimes there's good overlap, but a lot of times it can be not the greatest, because each of these groups have independent issues and needs. You know, if you're a researcher, you want to get the grant, you want to publish the paper, you want to get the money, you know, oftentimes you only have 2 to 3 years to get your results out. But community are not doing this on a 2 to 3 year time scale. They're doing this on a multi-generational time frame. And oftentimes these kia'i are working on their community issues as a volunteer. It's like an extra thing that they do after they come home and do their work on the weekends. So what we really wanted to do is to create a process for how do we get these two groups of people who really actually are, I mean, you know, we wanted to see academic researchers, you're actually part of the community. Kia'i, you are actually scientists and researchers as well, because you have important information that you have been carrying around that we need to know. How do we find that sweet spot where we can have just sustained relationships where the good stuff happens, you know, where we can have vision and leverage resources and sustainability and have impact? So this process, Kulana Noi'i, I just wanted to break it down because I don't like using, especially in the science realm, you don't want to just use random Hawaiian words. You want to imbue them with meaning for people. So Kulana means how do you carry yourself? You know, it has all of these other meanings. It's your rank, what's your position, your attitude. And Noi'i is really to seek knowledge or information to investigate. And so put together, it's the idea of, you know, what is your attitude or your approach to research? In other words, what are your research standards? And the way that we went about doing this was, and this is where those two things come together, is we realized that so much research and interest happens at He'ia Fish Pond that there was beginning actually to be a little bit of a breakdown between the researchers at He'ia Fish Pond and the kia'i. And so what we did in 2014 was we began to facilitate workshops with the community and with the researchers to try and bring us back together and bring us create pilina or connection. We also just did a literature search because this kind of participatory research is not new. It's been done so many times in the medical community. Uncle Emetaluli has been a leader in community-based participatory research, but there's also amazing examples of co-management in Fiji, in Aotearoa, also all across the continent as far as the Native American, you know, the First Nations peoples. And so we did a literature research, and all of that combined distilled into what we call the 8 kulana of best practices and guiding questions. And we don't want it to be one of those things where you do a checkbox. So we don't provide a lot of, you know, do this, do X, do Y. We don't provide like a binder where you can just have forms. It's got to be flexible. So you have to do the work as the researcher to get to know the community and make it adapted and specific to the community you work on. And it also considers both researcher and community perspectives. And this is a picture where we brought together researchers and community to really like guts on the table, kuka kuka, talk about these things. So we kind of subgroup them into building and nurturing pilina or research. First of all, these things are going to look super obvious, but in practice, they're quite difficult to do as a researcher and sometimes as a community member. So as a researcher, we need to be showing respect for community. Our relationship should be reciprocal, not extractive. When you're coming into a community, self-awareness and capacity, know how to address the people, address the place. Communication, this is often the most one. You know, in Hawaii, people don't always respond to emails, and that's how researchers, often communicate. Sometimes you got to pick up a phone. Sometimes picking up a phone is not enough, and you got to drive over there, and you also better be taking some food or something with you when you go, right? You cannot just show up. So these are the things that are the beginning. And then once you kind of establish that relationship, it's about maintaining that relationship. So how do researchers maintain the long-term focus? And we don't mean the long-term focus of your research agenda. We mean aligning your long-term focus to the people. How do we engage the community in review of that knowledge? How do we come to agreements about ownership and access? And then of course, like all relationships, you have issues. So when things fall apart, which is going to happen, this is a dynamic process. How do we build in accountability? So we wanted to share that we went through this process with the researchers at He'ia, along with the kia'i. We brought them to He'ia. We reminded them by having them work the land and be part of it, how wonderful it is. The researchers, 70% felt a stronger connection, 60% plan to change. For the kia'i, 100% of them got to know the researchers better and then saw what these people were doing was actually relevant. We took this to the university. We're institutionalizing it. We've had workshop series. We've had 70 faculty from over 14 departments participate in this work. And it's even become a part of UH grant proposal requirements that researchers who apply for these money and these funds must assume this responsibility of Kuleana and must say, okay, we're not just going to go to the community last minute and say, we need you to do all this kind of stuff. If they don't prove that they have established a relationship, these researchers for this particular grant call will not be eligible for these monies. So we really connected it to something that the researchers understand. And of course, we continue to train researchers and build capacity. Here, we took the researchers just to Kanewailoi for them to understand the wonderful things in their own backyard. And so I just wanted to say the impact of Kuleana is just 18 workshops and professional training over the past couple of years, and we've trained over 500 people. And so the other issue that's come up in the past 5 years, as we all know, well, it has been going on longer, is the TMT. And that's really been an issue that has been really fraught for Hawaiian scientists and local scientists, because for a long time, there's been this tension between science versus culture. And even me, for myself, I didn't take a stand on TMT for a really long time because I really didn't know how to position myself. And I want to give my aloha to my ho'aloha ke aloha Kaleilam Ho for in 2015 really recognizing that this is an issue and coming up with something that we could all grasp onto. And it was this simple phrase that Pono science is possible. Because up until this point, I had really bought into this false narrative that you could either be a scientist or have culture. And when I saw this, and I know it's on Facebook, but when I saw this, I really felt like this is what I needed to see. And when I was able to see that, then I really was able to have the strength to come out and make a stand that it's okay. And this is something that was kind of wild as a scientist, as a professor at the University of Hawaii, to come out and say, we really need to reject science that is built on Indigenous oppression. And it's okay to say that. And it's okay to support that kind of an issue. And I started being able to hear my voice, to gain a voice, and was able to publish these thoughts in one of the largest, most important scientific journals, which is just called Science. But last year, I was able to publish an opinion, really kind of laying out the idea that no field of science exists outside the sphere of culture, and that we need to have ethics as well when it comes to Mauna Kea. And I was just really propelled, by that need, the Kuleana I felt to stand up and be a voice for my students, to continue to help to educate and to try and bring together the community. And so I was able to organize a lecture series called Sciences and the Sacred, where we brought together community members as well as professors to look at different aspects of Mauna Kea. And then, of course, with the support of other Hawaiian scientists, we began to really challenge the narrative. So thankful to Katie Kamelamela saying, you know, I'm a Hawaiian scientist, we are not unicorns. And this conflict on Mauna Kea is not about Hawaiians versus science. Aurora Kagawa Viviani came out and wrote pieces. And basically we were all able to begin to really feel like we could come out and say our piece. Kawehi Loving is one of the first Hawaiian mathematicians that we have. You know, and then Keolu Fox came out and really kind of hit the nail on the head and say, this is really about colonial science. And then Sarah Kahanamoku at UC Berkeley said, at this moment, we really have to change the way that we do science. And so all of this came together in January when the annual conference for astronomers was here in Honolulu, it so happened. And so was this 10-year review of the profession of astronomy. And they had never had anybody talk about the impact of astronomy. And we were able to bring together a number of different of voices and opinions to really shed light on the fact that there are many, many impacts that we need to consider. And we were able to bring it to the Western kind of realms to have them hear and listen. And this is just a picture of us doing our press release to say, we have released a packet of 7 papers by the Native Hawaiian community. And, you know, nothing is more, touches me more than being able to then see in the next generation, these are my students who now feel that they have the voice to come out and express their opinions and their feelings for this very complicated issue. So I was just so proud of my students who took this picture and sent it to me and said, we're coming out and we are also, you know, taking a stand and showing what we believe in, and we're scientists and there's space for all of us. And of course, I love it when the next generation, my daughter Lehiva, also can be involved in this Aloha Aina movement. And I have the opportunity to kind of share some of my mana'o and was able to do so at Pu'uhuluhulu University. So just mahalo for your attention.
Wow, mahalo nui, Rosie. That was such an amazing presentation and sharing. I wasn't aware of all of the innovative works that you were working on, and it just goes to show how strong and beautiful of a legacy of research that you're leaving, just like how your mom shared of her work before you. And something that really stuck with me from the beginning of your presentation was that the UH system and the UH campus is a place for Kanaka Hawaii, that we have to assert ourselves and to make sure that that we really advocate for ourselves and our Aina and to keep the UH system accountable. And I think that's a really great message. And so mahalo nui, that was a great presentation. We have some ninau, we have some giveaways as well. I think our presenters are going to offer some giveaway questions, and for those who answer, I think it's the first 3 that answer first will receive the Nakua Aina book written by Dr. Davianna Mcgregor. So what kind of ninau would you like to ask our audience?
Well, we kind of consulted a little bit. We said, what is the name of the kupuna who helped open up Kapapalo'io Kanewai and pronounced Ho'okahiwai Ho'ulu Aina when the first water flowed down from the Manoa stream into the Lo'ikalo? What is the name of that kupuna from Ke'anai? Ah, somebody got it. Got 2.
That's good.
Yeah, the full name, not just the first name, the full name. Mahalo, mahalo.
Yep, we have to read books. So yep, let's see who else. Anybody else? Well, I just want to take some time to, I love that the Hanu Iloko and the Hanu Aku, and that idea of all the microbes and our prelina to the kupuna, you know, because we do that on a daily, and how powerful it is now to when you say it in that form too, that we're just breathing in the energy of our kupuna every day. And at times, especially, we have to stop and do that. Okay. Oh, look, we have 3 people. Okay. So I think what we want you folks to do, right, is to, yes, so Rosie, who is that kupuna? You can give
Uncle
that
Harry
answer.
Mitchell. Uncle Harry Kūnihi Mitchell. Uncle Harry Mitchell is the correct answer. So mahalo to those who answered correctly.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think if you can email us, what is the email, Napua? Aha Wahine at Gmail?
Aha Wahine Kūhinapapa at gmail.com.
Yes, if you can email us your address, then we can send you the puke, your gift, and for listening so intently to our presentation this evening. In fact, I opened my book today and I was reading just even the beginning, Auntie Davian, just talking about your folks' trip to Kaho'olawe with Uncle Harry and with your early group. And I thought, wow, I've had so many of those my own experiences like that, and how grounding it has been. So beautiful.
Yeah.
I have a quick question from the audience, if we could squeeze in, and that would be, how have you folks influenced each other? Is the question. In activism, in ohana, in academia, how have you influenced each other?
I don't know. You want to go first, Rosie, or?
I mean, influenced me my whole life. Yeah, I mean, she's my mom, so pretty much I gotta listen to everything she tells me to do. And we always have, well, we have a couple of funny family kind of things. One is listen to your mother. So of course, always got to do that. And then my mom is always right, especially when it comes to history facts. She has a mind that's why she's a historian. She has a mind like a steel trap. So never challenge her on historical events. Yeah, no, I just, of course, everything. I think growing up, just wanted to be like my parents. I think that's why I wanted to become a professor. So everything, just listen to my mom for everything.
Well, Rosie's always my sunshine girl. Whenever I'm feeling low, I talk to Rosie and she makes me feel bright. And when she was born, I was finishing my master's thesis. So she was my inspiration to finish up my master's thesis. And, having that maternity leave at the time gave me that break to really focus and concentrate and make that breakthrough. But in all the work that I do, I always want to have it be meaningful for her and now our grandchildren as well. But thank you for that question. It's a beautiful question. Mahalo.
Hello.
Wonderful.
Lesson of the night. Mom is always right.
Yes. Always listen to your mother. And actually, the other thing she always used to say is, don't talk to strangers. And no matter, every time I went somewhere, don't talk to strangers.
So awesome. I think one question that we kind of talked a little bit about earlier that we thought we'd ask was the challenges of grassroots activism and ohana. You folks, and all those pictures, there you are, Rosie, with your mom on her or around the area. But I think what's that like? I mean, we all are doing that, I think, with our own ohana. Many of us are doing that. But at that time, too, there were so many things that were not, like you said, the minority was not always represented. And you really had to push to make your, be heard.
Yeah, I know. And it was also a time of women's liberation where men were being expected for the first time to play their role in raising children and such. And Rosie's father was good in that way. But really, since both of us were active, and I continue to be active even later after we separated, my mainstay was my family, my mother and my father. So my my mother and father, as Rosie referred to earlier, we were talking about Waiale'e on Oahu and how it's such a special place because we had a family home there, and my parents were retired by the time Rosie was born, so she would spend a lot of weeks there, during the week with them and learning about Waiale'e and experiencing it. But they essentially hanai her and allowed us to be involved. And even as a single mother later, my dad always gave me that support. I remember when we had I'll always remember this, when the Hona Kahua issue came up and we were protesting how they had taken out 1,000 of our kupuna from Hona Kahua. And we had gone there and we had, prayed on it. And then the Pualani and Edward Kanahele said, we have to convene at the state capitol and have a 24-hour vigil and bring the issue to the governor, who was Waihe'i at the time. And so we met on the December, the Kealapolohiva Akanaloa, the winter solstice, and we set up outside, and we had to cook food for everybody, of course. And my dad, he came down, and he never likes the way I mix poi, so he said, I'm going to mix the poi. We had all this poi that people had contributed, and he came and he mixed the poi to make it good and special for everybody. And I always remember that he supported me with Rosie, raising Rosie, but also supported what we were doing.
Yeah, I think Grandpa had the good poi hands. You know how some people have the hands and some people's hands are hot? I know Grandpa had the right poi hands. I remember that. Wanted to also say that when I moved home from the continent, it was so incredibly difficult because my kane was still an attorney on the mainland and remained working there for 5 more years. And so there's no way that I could have done the work except that I moved in with my mother. I moved back to our house on Nayo Street, and Mom lived downstairs and I lived upstairs. And one of the most amazing gifts that she's ever given me that I don't know how I'll ever repay is she made the commitment, along with my mother-in-law, Miona Abe. They made the commitment to help take care of my kids. So for the first year, because it's so hard, I think so many of it's so hard to find childcare for anybody under the age of 2. So my mom watched Kuomo'o, my son, on Tuesdays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and every other Friday. And my mother-in-law watched him on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and every other Friday. And for the first year, and there's no gift more amazing than being able to be raised by your grandmothers, I think. And so, that's something that my children have that was something I wanted for them. And that's like one of the #1 reasons why we moved home to Hawaii, to be with Ohana. And I think that's why it's so important that in the academy, we enable our local people to stay home, and there's this really, there's this narrative like, you got to go away, but really our support systems are here. So that's why it's so important, I think, to be able to encourage that.
So we do have a few questions in here. I don't know, do we have time to do this? I think there's one for you, Rosie, in particular. You see it, I think, as an undergrad student in the community college and Native Hawaiian Wahine and STEM, been faced with criticism and challenge of thinking indigenous. Sometimes it can be intimidating. Do you have any words of encouragement to offer, and how to handle these situations?
So, I've actually had a number of situations like this, and I've actually had students who have experienced this. So, I was in the room with faculty on a committee where I was, of course, the only Native Hawaiian. Most of these situations, I'm only the only Native Hawaiian. And I mean, comments were just being made, like, people were just, I couldn't believe that I was hearing this actually, but people were saying how, Hawaiians had no idea how to do math, and like, isn't half of everything but they believe magic? I was so incensed. So the first thing I want to say is that I support you, and it's extraordinarily hard to keep your cool when these things happen. And it's extraordinarily hard to figure out what even to say to this nonsense. And I oftentimes, I don't want you to beat yourself up about it, because I have experienced myself is sometimes I don't even know what the right thing to say is to the nonsense. And then I leave the meeting and then I'm like, I have 15 things I could have said and I wish I said all of them. So the first thing I want to say is that if it's very hard and you can't say anything at that moment, it's okay. And I think, I mean, if it means the alternative is that you're going to blow up, and so if you feel like you cannot, I just want to say it's okay. But I also want to say that it's also important to find somebody that you trust, that you can kind of share these feelings with and this frustration with. And so I think that's one reason why SOAS My Mentoring Bridge was so important, because we needed to have others in SOAS or in the sciences be able to just talk to each other and have confirmation that it wasn't just them and that others were facing it that way. And I think what happens when we bring people together is you create that seed that then becomes critical mass that grows, and then together as multiple voices, you can then build the internal courage to say things and get things done. And that's what we did with Mauna Kea, was that no one of us felt strong enough, and we didn't realize that there were other people out there who also felt that way until we started just kind of talking to each other and feeling that way, and then strategizing. How are we going to combat this? And what is the way that people are going to hear us? And that's why we started writing these opinion pieces and thinking. And so it's really good. And then the other thing I want to say is that there are allies out there who might not be Kanaka, but believe in you and want to help you. And so oftentimes there were no Native Hawaiian faculty in STEM when I was coming up. So I had to rely on non-Hawaiians, non-Indigenous people who believed in me. And so I would say, look for those people, and you can look for me. You can email me, and I can try and, if I myself don't have the time to, I'm happy to connect you with other people in the university system, because now that we've begun to build these networks, I now know a lot more people. And of course, when those things happen, when people say stupid things, I do call my mom. That's what I did. I called my mom and I said, I can't believe they said this. And you know what she said to me? That was pretty much the only thing that made me feel better. She said, well, if it was 20 years ago, those things probably still would have been said, and nobody Native would have been in the room to hear them. And even if you couldn't say anything back to them, somebody heard that, and that's going to cause a change later on down the line. So I carried that, and I often lean back on that when I have to bite my tongue.
That's so beautiful. I'm gonna think about that. Yeah, it's like the ripple effect, right? The stone in the water. Oh, mahalo nui. Well, I could ask all kinds of questions. We can keep on going. Anybody else out there? But I did want to ask another question that we've actually asked all of our other panelists, which has been in this season that we are in right now. What is your form of self-care? How do you take care? I mean, we as Indigenous Hawaiian women, we carry a lot of Kuleana upon us, and one of the things has been this whole COVID, like we talked about earlier, with your mom not being present on island, not being able to be back and forth, your keiki. What have you folks been doing to basically stay maika'i, stay good, stay sane? Anybody?
That's a big one. Well, there's so many challenges because we have to go online and teach now. So I don't have much time to think about what to do, because I have to keep applying myself and working. I feel like I'm never offline. And the only time I was able to really unplug was when we went recently to Kaho'olawe, and you don't have the option to plug in. So it was, everybody there had the same expression. We were so happy not to be plugged in. And one of our friends, Momi Wheeler, said she unplugs every night. She just unplugs it when she goes to sleep and gets up, and on the weekend, certain hours. So I'm thinking maybe that's what I should do too, because it is really challenging. I've been lucky because here on Molokai, we've had very few cases. We had 3 recent ones that brought us up to 20. And so, you know, we've all been very watchful, but luckily the island as a whole has sort of took a stand not to have people come into the island, and Maui Nui picked up on it. And so we closed down, and we've been, you know, protected. So within the island, we have some, you know, flexibility because we don't have that many cases. But one thing that Emmett and I do every weekend is we drive out to Puko'o and visit with our good friend Colette Machado and her husband Myron Akutagawa, and we go for a swim. So that has kept us sane. Well, at least once a week, go visit friends and get in a good swim.
Perfect advice. Rosie?
So what I've been doing is actually, I think I'm in this hui with you and my mom, is I've been participating in Antikalei Nuhi with Kanainai together. And it's given me a lot of grounding, been able to learn Oli, and just kind of seeing people, you know, in that space of people who want to be positive has really been helpful for me. The other thing I do every day is I go for a walk. And I like to look around the neighborhood and just see what's different and what's changed. And the final thing that we do is a practice that we, well, also Antikalei Nuhiva, but we did it as part of Ko'olau Aino Momona, is we continue to kilo, and we have our little panana stones, and you know, just looking at the clouds and looking at the rain, and continuing to try and connect with the outside has been really helpful for us.
Yeah. I walk every day too. I walk for 1 hour and 15 minutes, about 3 miles every day, while Emmett plants taro and waters the kalo and talks to them. Talking to the kalo is really good.
Maika'i, mahalo nui for sharing. So we're just gonna wrap up our presentation. I'm gonna share some closing slides. So if you aren't connected with us yet, we have a Facebook and Instagram page at Aha Wahine Kūhinapapa, and we also have our website. We update our website often with the different webinars that are coming up in this series. Our next one is going to be on January 14th, and we're going to have Martha Evans and Anela Evans from Lanai, and they're going to be sharing their experience in Aloha Aina and community activism, education, and Malama Aina. And so we will be providing updates on our social medias and our website for that soon. We will be sharing our Survey Monkey link with everyone through email. And if you'd like to share your thoughts about our webinars, please do so. And mahalo nui, of course, to our sponsors and partners, Hawaii Nui Akea, Hawaii People's Fund, Hopo'ololokahi, and OEV TV. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Mahalo nui.
Ai, mahalo nui.
Mahalo nui loa. Ai, mahalo. Malama pono. Kia kua pu.
Ai, aloha.
Aloha, mahalo.
Mahalo. Nā kua pu. Aloha.